Hey there, good morning and happy Tuesday. Thank you so much for making the time to watch this replay. Today, we're talking about how to stay grounded in your message. Even if you feel like you're crystal clear in your message, you know exactly who you're talking to explain what you do, showing up as an expert every single time so that in a way that people care about. Sometimes it's easy to get a little comfortable and complacent, and all of a sudden one day you'll feel like your marketing stops working. And if that's ever happened to you, I want to share with you today how you can stay grounded in your message so that it continues to remain effective and impactful. Now, for those of you who don't know me or don't know me well, my name is Carrie Price. I'm a brand messaging coach, helping ambitious service-based business owners find and own the words to stand out, be heard, and make your message roar. Hey Sierra, hey Helen, so great to have you guys on with me live today. Thank you so much for being here. So has that ever happened to you? You feel like you're really clear on your message, you really understand your ideal client, you know how to talk to them about the things that they care about that draws and attracts them into you. But one day it just feels like everything just stops working and you can't figure out why. Well, first of all, if you don't feel that way, then I want you to get comfortable with that. I want you to get very confident in your message so that you roar, right? So that people hear you, that you stand out from everybody else, and that you can confidently show up as an expert. But even if you do that, I know I've felt this way where I'm going along, I'm feeling pretty confident in my message, who I'm talking to, and sometimes I feel like, wait, something happened. Did I lose my way a little bit? And then if I go back and pay attention, oh, sorry, Siri's talking at me. She thinks I recently activated Siri. I actually not used Siri before. Anyway, sorry, got distracted by that. So what I was saying is, I feel pretty confident in my message and I go along and I feel like I know who I'm talking to and how to speak to my ideal client. But then sometimes I just feel like, ooh, I feel like something's missing the mark a little bit. What happened? Now, I'll tell you that what I think partly happens is we are putting ourselves out there, especially in the online space, and we're surrounded by everybody else who's also sharing their message. We're consuming information from our own mentors and from people that we associate with. And we start to pick up maybe some of that language. I actually have this problem and I blame my dad. I get it from my dad. My mom even told me she could always tell when my dad started working with new people at the office because he would come home and he would have a different way of talking or, start using different terminology. I pick up accents like that way. My husband's from Missouri, and when we go up there and spend time up there, I start to pick up a little bit of a twang. I don't have an accent. And it's funny because I don't ever want anyone to feel like I'm making fun of them, but there's just something about the way our brains work. We try and assimilate with the surroundings that we're in, right? So you might pick up an accent or a phrase or a way that people are talking or communicating. And next thing you know, that's become part of your vocabulary, part of your message. Now, this is actually a really good thing if the people that you're picking that language up from is your ideal client. But we're out there engaging with a lot of people, other entrepreneurs, competitors, people who do a similar thing that we do, and we're surrounding ourselves with all this information. You might not realize that you're picking up sayings. I worked for a company for 4 years based in Boston. And every time I would fly out there to visit or even working with people remotely, I picked up the word wicked. So if you're from Boston, you know that everything's wicked, right? And so for a long time, that was a part of my vocabulary. When I stopped working with people in Boston, I realized that faded away. Being here in Texas, I've picked up y'all and all y'all. But I really have to watch where I use that. And when you're in different situations, you'll notice that your own vocabulary changes. So that happens in our business as well and in our message. And so it starts to seep into our marketing. Hey, Tanya, so great to see you. Thanks for being here live with me today. Tanya says, yeah, I keep wanting to say y'all and I don't know why. I'm from South Dakota, but I'm not Southern. Chances are you're seeing people online who are picking that up. Terms like biz besties, you start seeing that online. All of a sudden, one day I said like, oh, and invite your biz besties. That's not something that's part of my own brand vocabulary, but something that I picked up, right? And you see other people and you think like, oh, this language seems to be resonating, and even subconsciously you start adopting that. So what do you do? How do you prevent this? And to be honest, it's going to be hard to prevent it, especially if you're somebody like me who naturally just starts morphing my language and the way that I talk based on the surroundings that I'm in. That's partly what made me a really great business analyst when I was doing that, because my job was to go in and fully understand the business that I was consulting for, understand their problem and be able to solve those problems for them, which is very similar to what I do through messaging as well. But what happens when you do that is, in order to really connect with people, you start to use their language, right? So I might walk in and explain things a certain way. The moment I would hear my client explain it a different way, that's the way that I would talk about it going forward, right? That's the power of having messaging that is relatable to your ideal client. It's using their language, talking about the things that they talk about, because that helps you make a connection, right? We just have to be careful where we're getting that influence from. We have to stop and ask ourselves, but is this what my ideal client cares about? I was talking to a client the other day who was working on renaming her program, and she was asking for advice and feedback, and other people were chiming in and giving their suggestions. But I chimed in and I said, hang on, wait a minute. I get what they're saying, but that language, you have to ask yourself, is that the language your ideal client's talking about, not the other business owners who might be in your similar space? And it's not that the idea wasn't great. The concept was great. We always have to come back and check against what our ideal client is going to relate to, what's going to resonate for them, while still showing up as one of a kind and not sounding like anybody else, right? So we're sort of doing ourselves a disservice when we morph our language too much. Like, it's a fine balance of using the language that our ideal clients are saying with our own one-of-a-kind way to speak to that. Hey, Tanya, so great to see you. Yeah, it works with body language too. Absolutely. If you are naturally a hand talker like me and you meet somebody in person who's not a hand talker, one of two things will happen. They will either start using their hands more when they talk, or you will start to use it less. So this is the power of having a message that your ideal client is attracting to, right? It's relatable to them. It resonates for them, because they're going to be drawn to that if they're already like that. If you're already using the language, they're like, oh, hey, wait, she totally gets me, right? So here is what you do to stay really grounded in your own message. One, you need to be paying attention to the marketing that you're doing, whether that's social media content that you're putting out there. If you have a post that does really well and all of a sudden it stops doing well, you need to look at where you're placing it. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go into that saturation. But if you're putting out new content that is similar, because you're like, ooh, that posted really well, so let's create some new content and it's similar, and maybe it doesn't do as well, one of the things you might want to look at is evaluate what might be different. Did you change the way you spoke? Did you try and introduce a new way of speaking about something that you thought you were hearing in the market, right? So you need to be observant. If it's your emails that you're sending out, you're doing email marketing, and all of a sudden open rates and click rates start dropping, there might be a lot of other factors, but one of the things to look at is, did you do something that changed in your message? Facebook Live topics, video topics, all of these things. When you start to see a decline in what otherwise has given you results, one of the things to look at is, have you shifted at all in your message? Now, you might be doing that on purpose. You might be trying something new, right? And so you're testing that out. You put it out there. Maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. So you're in constant evaluation and feedback collection mode, right? But what do you judge that against? Well, it's really important that you do fully develop your brand message and you document it. What I help my clients do is put together a brand message usage guide. All of the elements that are going to help you speak to who your ideal client is, getting very clear what's important to know about them, what they care about, the problems that they have, the results that they want, how to position yourself uniquely in the market, all of your own one-of-a-kind ways of talking about things. When you start catching yourself using like the lingo that's out there in, your competitors are using, sanity check that against your one-of-a-kind message that you created for yourself, right? Everybody, here's a good example. Everybody talks about being authentic and authenticity, and that's really important in your message. I take that, and I don't want that to be very forward in my message, although it's very important. Everybody's talking about authenticity. But what does that mean? It means that you show up exactly as you are, like who you are, be the expert that you are in your one-of-a-kind way, because there's only one you. But it has to also speak to your ideal client. It has to use language that they're using, but that can't be fake. Right? So I'm going to talk about the concepts of that in relation to how it makes your message roar. And yes, I talk about authenticity. And yes, I talk about being real and getting engagement. But if all of a sudden all I talked about was authenticity and engagement, I've now diluted my own message. Right? I've lost what makes me one of a kind, how I show up in the market. And that's what you need to evaluate too. But you got to have something to measure that against. You need something to sanity check against, right? Now, that doesn't mean your brand message will never change, because I hate to tell you, it is not once and done work, right? You don't develop it and then you're like, great, this is exactly what we use all the time. You do want to be constantly getting feedback from your ideal clients. And I can't stress that enough. I see people who put out posts in their own groups, on their pages, in other people's groups, asking for feedback like, hey, what do you think about this title? Or hey, what do you think about this freebie? And they'll get a ton of feedback. But the question you need to ask yourself is, are you getting it from the people who ultimately are going to be receiving it? That's your ideal client. Those are the people you want to attract. If you are, you're in health and wellness and you focus on vegans and you ask me, not as a messaging coach, but as a person, like, hey, what do you think of this title? Well, I'm not a vegan and I don't understand personally what vegans care about. So I might give you some feedback, but if it's not coming from a vegan, it might not be as powerful for you, right? It might not be as impactful. Now, as a messaging coach, if you were to ask me, I would ask you a whole bunch of questions if we're not already working together. You're not already working through my programs, like who really is your ideal client? What do they care about? I'm going to ask you all that stuff so that I can give you feedback that your ideal client cares about, not what I care about, right? It doesn't matter if I like it or not. What matters is, does your ideal client like it and resonate with it? Okay? So yeah, we need to be listening to our ideal client. Our message will evolve. But if you're feeling like all of a sudden you're sounding like everybody else, that's a natural, normal thing. So sanity check that. Take a step back, be evaluating everything that you're doing, but evaluate it against your one-of-a-kind, relatable, let's put that in order. Evaluate that against your relatable, one-of-a-kind, actionable and reliable message. And if your message is developed in that way, it will be what your ideal client needs to hear. If you are not yet feeling like your message works. So again, this is if like you're already feeling like you have clarity, your message is nailing it, and it starts to drift, that's totally normal. But if you're not even there, if you're not even at the point where you feel like, yeah, I'm confident, I know exactly who I'm talking to, I know exactly what they need to hear from me, my message roars, then I want you at least to grab my freebie today. It's 4 things you can start doing today to make your message roar. Just go to carrieprice.com/4things. That's the number 4. And that will give you some things that you can start doing right away. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop that in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. This is what I want to leave you with today. I want you to be confident, stay confident in a message that will continue to work for you. And when it starts to feel like it's not working as much, you need to stop and evaluate, sanity check that back against your own message that roars, and make adjustments as needed. In the meantime, I'm going to wrap up for today, and I'll see you back here next week. I always forget to look at the topics, but if you want to know what the topics are each week, you can get that delivered directly to you via Facebook Messenger. Just go to carrieprice.com/notify me. And that'll send you the topic every week, an hour before I go live, so you can decide if you want to join me live or catch the replay. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching the replay, it's not too late to get your questions answered. I will come back and answer every single one. In the meantime, don't settle for sounding like anybody else. Make sure you stand out, you get heard, make your message roar. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.